Hi everyone, it's Miss Shaz Jones. Welcome to the BibleHax podcast. I'm very excited today to be joined by Josh Hammann, who is a senior leader at Lighthouse. And Josh, I really want to thank you for doing this. I know you've got a lot on. I'm going to start with a quote and then a question. So here's the quote. Any other team wins the World Series, good for them. They're drinking champagne, they get a ring, but if we win, on our budget with this team, we'll have changed the game. And that's what I want. I want it to mean something. Josh, does that mean something to you?
Oh, it absolutely does. And thanks, Sharon, so much for having me on this podcast. It's a real honour anytime to share a bit of my story. And so I appreciate you asking me. But that means something on two levels. One, it means something because it's my favourite movie. So thanks for sharing that quote. I love the reason.
So the movie is Moneyball. It's from the prophet Brad Pitt.
Great theologian, Brad Pitt is. And it's my favourite movie because I love sport, but I also love movies that are true or based on truth because I get excited by seeing reality happen, but I really want to know how it worked out behind the scenes. And that's I guess that's why I love those types of movies. But I guess it resonates with me because I like to think a little bit differently. I don't work with the New York Yankees budget to use a Moneyball sort of thing, but I believe in doing things innovatively and differently that not only use an Oakland A's type resource level, but also one that does change the game, which is what you do when you don't do things the way everybody else does them. So, I guess I want my life to mean something, and I've found people that I respect, or if I've had any success in my life to this point, it's usually because I did it because it meant something, and I did it with a bit of a different path than maybe the way it's always been done.
Well, let's talk about that different path because I believe you used to be a physical education teacher, but I've known you as the leader of Lighthouse. That sounds like a bit of a leap to me. Anyone who knows you knows that you love sports. So what motivated you to get out of that physical education world and into more church ministry?
It's a good thought. That was 11 years ago. One of my other favourite quotes, by the way, Shaz, I think it's from School of Rock, but it basically says if you can't do, teach, and if you can't teach PE. And that offends a lot of PE teachers because they like to take their profession very seriously, but I don't like to take myself too seriously, so I actually enjoy that quote. And when people have a go at PE teachers, but what I do just rebut with is the fact that usually PE teachers are the most popular and also liked by the most amount of students, so it's usually an insecure maths teacher that shares that quote. But I do love sports, and I wouldn't say anything particularly motivated me to get out of it. I actually really enjoyed teaching. I thought I was going to become a school principal like my dad. Thought that was my path in the future. I think I do get unsettled at different points, and you want more out of life, and I guess I presented. I could have got that with teaching, but I was just presented with a very random opportunity from my senior leader at the time that obviously I respect hugely, and just said he had a job and would you consider working at Lighthouse in a job I wasn't really qualified for at all. But there was some sense of adventure that I wanted to go on with the vision here. I don't want to clear it up for your listeners. Some people, when I left teaching and started working at the church, they would, congratulate me that I'm now going into the ministry. I didn't view it like that. I viewed my teaching as a ministry, and I view what I do here as a ministry. So it wasn't me leaving something and then going into any sense of greater purpose or calling than a teacher could be or would be.
Mm-hmm.
But there was just a sense of adventure, I think, about working on something different and maybe scratching an itch that I, didn't know I had. And I also would say that, when I made that decision, I'm turning 41 this week, Sharon, but I was about 28. I think I was 28. But I think I'd think about it a bit longer if I was presented with the same opportunity. Like, you don't really know what you're heading into sometimes. And as you get a little bit older, you feel like you have a little bit less risk or less margin for error. And yeah, it's probably, I'm glad I made it when I did, because I'm not sure I'd be so brave to make a quick career decision like that again. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of how it all went about. But I do think everything that I did with teaching, I enjoyed, but it helped me to build who I am in this role as well. I did have a funny moment just recently. Sorry, you go.
Yeah, let's talk about those roles, because you've got a few different things that I know of. I know you're a father of 4.
Yes.
And husband of 1?
1. Just that's what you read about me is true. Yeah.
But as far as your occupational roles, I think you're on a board. You're got a role with the ACC. I know you as the leader of Lighthouse, and I hear a lot about some chaplaincy work that you do. Just tell us about what your titles or roles are in your main occupation.
Yeah, I think you've nailed nearly all of them. The other one I'd add is it's a real privilege to be the president of our school, Cedars Christian College as well. But all of them really stem from being a leader here at Lighthouse, and those opportunities to connect with community as, I guess the role here has grown. It does sound like a lot of roles, and, it sounds probably quite tiring or maybe some people like having a lot of roles because it impresses people. But I mean, they are impressive when you say them, but I don't do them to impress people. I was sharing with you before we hit record, really have a great sense of call that I feel like has crystallized over the last couple of years. And that has been, I think, calling in life crystallizes when you try a lot of things and you say yes to a lot of things. And some of those, some roles I've done in the past, I don't do now because you realise this is not me. But for me, I feel like God's spoken to me clearly around the idea of making faith accessible to a community that thinks it's not. I honestly believe Australians are spiritually hungry, that they want a relationship with Jesus. They just don't often like the church window he's presented in, or they're disillusioned with the church. And rather than trying to separate myself from that, or I want to say, I feel like I want to understand both sides, but bring the two together. So I feel like God's placed me in a position to do all those titles, not to busy myself up and not to impress, but also I think they all connect back to that calling. And I could have 7 other titles that are all random and don't do that, but these ones are like the best idea I've thought of. I hold them loosely. The Bible talks about holding things loosely. I do love them and I don't want to not do them, but I also recognise that titles are for seasons, but your calling, I think, sticks. And maybe I'll have other titles in the future, but I feel like the calling will stay the same. So I say it with all reverence and all appreciation to those roles, but I don't feel called to any one of those individually. Okay. I feel called to what God's called me to do. And when people share their calling, it doesn't always sound that impressive to other people. But you just know deep in your heart, you have a conviction of like, this is what you're made to do.
Mm.
And it doesn't feel big enough sometimes. So people are like, well, how does that be a job or a career to make faith accessible to a community? You know, what does that even mean? It doesn't, I mean, you know, why not, you know, save world hunger or do world peace or what, you know, these things that are as large and impressive. But when you know that God's placed you in this patch of grass to do this type of thing, and it is hard to articulate sometimes, but you just know what you're doing is what you're meant to be doing. And then
let's use the word middleman, because I know you had a podcast called The Middleman, and I know you've been invited to speak at conferences about being a middleman. What is it about middleman that is the space that you've kind of carved out for yourself? What does middleman mean to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's come from my life's sort of work here for the last 9 to 10 years, which is that I was in a lot of middle management roles. I was in that space between vision and reality and ideas and action. But it could be more summed up in a feeling, really. Middleman is that feeling, you know, if you are a man or woman in a middle leadership role anywhere in that space that I've just described. And it really, you know, you've all been there. You've come into, it's a team meeting and your boss or your CEO or your senior pastor is sitting around with a team and, you know, all these ideas are being discussed. And then, you know, the boss decides on one and says, that sounds like a great idea. Let's make that happen. And then he or she might leave the room and then move on to their next 6 things on the day. But you very well know that the simplistic way they made it sound, so let's just make that happen. And then not even thinking about it again is complex, and it's you've got to communicate to several different stakeholders. You've got to potentially offend some people with that idea. You've got to empower some other people with that idea. You've got to think creatively how to make that idea work with what might be a big idea, but no resource to do it. It's far from simple, but you can be sitting in there like, does anybody else understand this? And that's what it feels like to be in the middle. And I started the podcast because I wanted to not have fun at CEOs and senior leaders at how easy sometimes those ideas sound, but actually to empower middle leaders to go, this is a very valid space of leadership. It takes a unique skill set and an ability to kind of have those tools all the time to deal with different scenarios, complex situations that you might just think are normal for you, but are actually a very rare and valid skill of leadership. And also you might think, does anybody else feel like this? I feel alone in this. You know, it seems easy for the boss to walk out, and it seems easy for other people in the team just to go, oh, you know, that person, whoever in the middle, will deal with that. And everybody else kind of goes back to their day. But if you believe in a vision, you don't want to be that guy or girl that just says, hey, you know, I'm just the middleman, don't shoot the messenger, or that's, you know, someone's just told me to do. You want to be that person that can turn that vision, which seems simple, but you know is fragile, and you want to handle it with care, because you get the life experience that nobody else does. That it's because of you that vision gets felt and experienced by others. And if it wasn't for you or that middle leader or those people, those ideas stay ideas. That vision stays a beautiful statement on a wall somewhere. But it's because of you and that the skills God's given you and your ability to handle all that, that actually a vision gets felt or experienced or actioned or gets to grow. So it's incredibly important. Some people, I think we're always in the middle anyway at some stage, but
I think we are, definitely.
I guess,
yeah, that's a great way of looking at it too. Is there any like biblical references or people in the Bible that you can see parallels with being a middleman, or any scriptures that have inspired your work in this area?
Yeah. I think my journey, Sharon's been like I don't go through a complex scenario or something that's really difficult to handle in the middle, and then I go, oh, that's right. I remember Joseph or Daniel or David, and here's what they do, and then all of a sudden I just feel so much better. I actually, I actually probably get myself into trouble because I'm just like, I just go head first into just my own skills and strengths and talent that God's given me to make it all happen. And then you kind of come to the end of yourself a little bit and realize that it's, as the Bible says, it's not by it's not by might or power that we get things done. It's by God's Spirit that things move forward. Or God asks us to have plans, but it's Him that establishes the steps. And I learned that lesson the hard way hundreds of times. There are moments you go through all the time. So I would say that this type of handling of middle roles, nothing has grown me more in terms of leaning on God to actually make things happen. And I would say, when I track back through that way, I kind of get to the end of myself, and then I find myself walking down the beach, experiencing a sunrise, talking to God, or reading the Bible, and that's when I kind of look to those stories of people like Daniel, and I've been reading them recently again, Daniel and David and Joseph, and I mean they're in very unique scenarios where they have big core beliefs, or yet they're serving under a leader, or which they're obviously trying to respect and honour, but then they're also very called by God to do certain things in life, and I respect those Bible characters hugely. I try to I resonate with them in the sense that I can see how those types of characteristics play out in my own life at different points.
I can see you said a couple of times there the phrase "make things happen" or "making it happen." Is there any tools that we can give listeners that actually do make things happen? How do you take those decisions to move people or move a vision forward? Have you got any tips for them?
I remember having a coffee with one of my mentors that I really respect. It's more of a casual relationship. It's not an official mentoring one. And I asked him, I just said, you always seem to make the right decision. And how do you always land on making the right one? Because I realised that to simplify middle roles, your job is to make decisions really, and to keep cultural direction in track really. But he said, well, the worst decision you make is no decision at all. And he gave me these 3 words, which sound overly simple, but really, anytime you're presented with a decision, you have 3 options. In my mind, I think of them like this: yay, nay, or delay. And I think if you can say yes, I mean, you can simplify and go, all I've got to do is I've got to say yes, I've got to say no, or I've got to delay it for 6 months, 3 months with a good reason. And again, you think everybody's skilled to make decisions all the time, but it's actually one of the things that not everybody has, and you realise that sometimes it is on you to you make a decision, or you've got to bring something to a decision point. But I've realised if you can make quick decisions and be clear on those, even if it's the wrong one in the end, and you can be humble enough to say it down the track when it didn't work out, whether it's right, wrong, I think making quick decisions builds trust with leaders, and because things don't drag on too long. You and I both know if you lack communication, or there's a void of decision making and leadership, it breaks trust, it disillusions people. Things get isolated and then grow weird. So without a void of leadership, so just trying to make quick decisions. And I would say delaying is okay too, as long as it's not like I'll delay that for 6 months' time. But then you only think about it again in 6 months' time. I think if you're going to delay a decision, it's important also to have some action sort of plan to get up to when you're going to make that decision again. Because I have done that. I've delayed because I really don't want to make a decision. And then I realised in 6 months' time the decision's still there, the complexity is the same, and I haven't done anything about it. So I always delay with an action plan to move it to a better decision in that time as well.
It's a great framework for making decisions. I really like that. Yay, nay, or delay. I also want to ask you about Lighthouse, which is my church as well. So you're my pastor, my leader. One of the things that Lighthouse says is that they exist to kind of serve the community with the power of God, which I think a lot of churches would say, but also with innovation. Why is innovation important to Lighthouse?
Yeah, I mean, Lighthouse is it's a strange church in the sense that it's 50 years old, which is fairly old for a church, a Pentecostal church, but also has this ability to change things up regularly. So it's consistent yet courageous. But actually, I think they're linked. I think to have longevity, you need to make courageous decisions or different decisions. And innovation really is just like, everybody's going to look at this way. But imagine like a diamond, I'm going to look at it through this angle, but not to be cute or to be different just for different sake, but we just want to spin the diamond around and go, well, there might be a different way to look at this because, we can't look at it this way because we don't have enough resource or people aren't connecting with that or resonating that, or that's not where current culture's up to. Mm-hmm. So we want to be not a Christian country club on Sundays. We want to be a place that's part of the social fabric of its city. Church's greatest fear is most churches' greatest fear would be if our doors closed. No one would notice. I honestly believe that we've created a culture and a church that wouldn't be the case. And that's come out of just being able to make different decisions, having a high awareness around we speak to humans, not just Christians. We understand that where our current community is up to. If it matters to our current community, it matters to us. And I'm not sure. I think a mission of a church to go and make disciples. Every church has the same mission, or should. But I also think God gives a great permission off the Great Commission to do a unique styles of church everywhere in Australia. And I think we're just taking our great permission that God's given us. So that's your vision filter of power of God and innovation to outwork the church in a way that's different, unique, applicable to our own city and circumstances. Has an awareness of the collective potential of the people that do come on Sundays. So most pastors are answering questions people aren't asking. So we want to have a great understanding of our people, because we believe what it says about that the church is a body. It's not an event, and we want to understand that we connect all this together to grow the kingdom. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I think it's more just some cultural lenses we look through that I think are different. But the last thing I'd say about different or innovation is that we haven't said that about ourselves necessarily.
Okay.
We asked our community to tell us 10 years ago what they think of us. We did a community-wide survey to hire a professional company to survey people in the Illawarra, because you got to hold your titles and your vision loosely at different points as well. If Lighthouse is not a brand that works or a church name that operates or people don't resonate with, but we asked our community, what do you think of when you think of Lighthouse? And 78% of the Illawarra said, well, when we think of Lighthouse, we think of a place that helps people. And then we said, well, what do you think of Lighthouse when you think of it in the context of church. And a lot of people in the Illawarra say, well, we don't always know exactly what happens in a church, but what we do know is that we just find Lighthouse cropping up or saying things in different ways. And we took that to be different good, not different weird. And that's how we came up with this sort of phrase around Lighthouse, a different light. We feel like our community's named us, not, this is not Josh sitting around in a boardroom just saying, hey, what's a cool way to describe ourselves. But you and I both know, Shaz, too, this different light concept has layers that tracks right back to being salt and light and not keeping our light hidden, as well as just being in a different space than most other churches might find themselves too. So, sorry, my phone's going off. I should have put it on silent.
That's fine. So you mentioned their disciple making and the Great Commission. And when you think about those things, it really is God telling us that we're a middleman. So the scripture, like when Jesus said, for God so loved the world that he sent his only middleman, really sort of resonates with all of us that are building the kingdom, or the Great Commission to go and make middlemen, essentially. Disciples are people that are sent. This, and Paul, when he was talking to his disciple Timothy, he said, go and entrust it to, the things that I've taught you, go and find other able, faithful people who will also teach others. So it's this chain of middlemen throughout history that are carrying the message of the kingdom. So I think it's really valuable, the space that you are in, to other people, whether they're entrepreneurs running their business or just a neighbor or a father or a friend that's engaging with the community, to keep in mind that concept of being a middleman and making that faith accessible to people that otherwise wouldn't find it accessible. So I know that people are going to want to get in touch with you, Josh. How can they follow up with you or find out more about what you or Lighthouse is doing?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. People are more than welcome to jump onto our website, adifferentlight.com.au, and you'll find there a lot of the concepts and principles outworking with the things I've spoken about. I always, people want to follow me on social media. I love that because I like sharing stories and championing people in our community and living out this, community leadership lifestyle through that. So you can follow me at Josh_Hammann. That's with 2 M's and 2 N's. And I say that to say that that's the part of me that is the highlights. It's not the real me. If you want to know the real me, you listen to this podcast or you have a coffee with me. And people are more than welcome to do that, or pop into one of our gatherings. They're always open and accessible to people, and you can find all that information on the website as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining me today, Josh. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. I really appreciate the invite, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you.